It's time for the Lisa Benson Show, your home for national security news and commentary. And now, your host, Lisa Benson.
Good afternoon, America. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today. This is Lisa Benson, your host for the Lisa Benson Radio Show for National Security Matters, where week after week we bring you accurate, measured, and intelligent information to protect the American people and the American homeland. Listening today are people from around the nation and at least 3 countries that I know of, including Israel, Egypt, and Austria. Happy Memorial Day, everyone. I hope you'll be safe out there. This broadcast is dedicated to all the brave men and women who have served the country dutifully and who have lost their lives doing so we can live in America free and secure. Our heartfelt gratitude to them and to their families. To our friends in northern Arizona and who are in harm's way due to the Sedona slide fire, where more than 10,000 acres have been burnt in a horrendous forest fire, please stay safe. And we know of several hotshot firefighters who are graduates of Northern Arizona University, young folks devoting their lives to protecting the stunning forests of Arizona and the people who make northern Arizona their home. Stay safe, everyone. This fire has a great deal of horsepower. We have a very compelling and interesting program for you today. In studio with me is Dr. Zuhdi Jasser. And welcome, Dr. Jasser.
Lisa, it's great to be with you. And I would just want to add as a veteran, my gratitude to all those who have given their ultimate sacrifice to our nation on this Memorial Day weekend.
And I thank you for serving as well. And thank you for giving up some of your holiday weekend to be with our listeners. My co-host today is Jerry Gordon, retired Army Intelligence Senior Editor of the New English Review and honorary board member of this broadcast and of the National Security Task Force of America. Welcome, Jerry.
Welcome, Lisa, and I'm pleased to be here with somebody who I've had the privilege of interviewing. That's Dr. Jasser.
Yes, we are. This is a great broadcast. Thank you also, Jerry, for giving up part of your holiday. Dr. Jasser is a medical doctor, a former lieutenant commander in the United States Navy, where he served as staff internist in the Office of the Attending Physician of the United States Congress. In 2003, with a group of American Muslims, Dr. Jasser founded the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, AIFD, based in Phoenix, Arizona. He is also a contributor to national and international media, where he has advocated separation of mosque and state and spoken against the ideology of political Islam, or what many call Islamism. He has been a frequent guest on Fox News, CNN, CBS, and MSNBC, and has contributed articles to the New York Post, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Times. Dr. Jasser has testified before Congress in March of 2011 to the U.S. House of Representatives Committee on Homeland Security with Congressman Pete King as chairman. And on June 2012, he appeared again before the U.S. House of Representatives Committee on Homeland Security to discuss the Muslim community's response to the committee's hearings on radicalization in the American Muslim communities. Dr. Jasser is the son of political refugees from Syria. They left Syria in 1963. On my newsletter today, I put Dr. Jasser is former Navy commander. He is an American patriot. He is a Muslim activist, and he is a friend to many of us here. This show today is to highlight, for those of us who are critical thinkers, many of the aspects of being a Muslim and being Islamic, and what it means to individuals, what it means to us who are trying to identify who the enemy is, and to move forward with strategy as we safeguard the American homeland. Dr. Jasser, I listened last night to your testimony to Pete King and his committee, and you said, for your first question here today, you said the following: I sit before you a proud, devout American Muslim whose country is polarized on its perceptions of Muslims and the radicalization that occurs within our communities. One camp refuses to believe any Muslim could be radicalized, living in blind multiculturalism, apologetics, and denial, and the other camp believes all devout Muslims are in the faith of Islam are radicalized. Between these two polarities is reasoned, pragmatic approach focused on solutions that recognizes the beauty of one of the world's great religions, while also acknowledging the existence within a dangerous internal theopolitical domestic and global ideology that must be confronted, which you call Islamism. I hope that these hearings are the beginning of a rational national conversation about these solutions, and that is exactly why this show exists. So tell me, Zuhdi, my purpose has always been to understand the enemy, and John Guandola will always say to us when he's on the show, know thy enemy. This is where the rubber hits the road for those of us who are confused. Does moderate Muslims mean there is moderate Islam?
Well, I think that's the most important question of the 21st century, and my hat's off to you for having the courage to do this, because it's waters that are quite tumultuous that we're trying to navigate. And the reason I laid that out that way is that, now many of us have been quite happy to see Jay Leno and others on the left finally waking up with the Sultan of Brunei and the evil of Sharia that he implements there and the laws that are coming forth. And, on the one hand, we're wondering, where have they been? On the other hand, I think we should look at it positively, that the left's waking up, that there's a hypocrisy of many of the Muslims, that they, what happens is the Muslim community in America, because we're a minority, gets co-opted by the left to say, oh, they defend rights, they defend the victimization and against the bigotry, and they use it as a political wedge issue, when in fact they don't look at the bigger issue, which is 25% of the world's population, 56 countries are Muslim majority, that are being run by misogynistic dictators that control militaries, that control large swaths of society, and are implementing a form of Islam that is not only draconian, but that the war is not only against Al-Qaeda, that the war, and I think it's bigger than the Cold War was, in that the Al-Qaeda is simply the tip of an iceberg, a bigger iceberg, which is political Islam. And while the left uses Muslims in America to say that the right is bigoted, unfortunately, my other point about the right is that what are the solutions? Fine, I'm not going to at any point convince anybody that's not Muslim that Islam makes sense, because it's a religion, it's faith. If you don't believe in it, it's mythology to you. So, the bottom line is what's the strategy for the right? If our strategy is to prove that Islam is a totalitarian faith and there's no way to work with Muslims, then it must be somehow to then convert a quarter of the world's population, and I don't think that's going to work, or defeat them somehow and have them leave their faith through defeat, much like we did in Japan, etc. But that was a political defeat in World War II, not a religious one, which I think would sentence us to interminable wars. And I will tell you that the other issue is, look at how many Muslims. I will admit that we have a major leadership problem in our faith. But if you look at the Muslim grassroots, the Malalas of the world, the women in prisons in Saudi Arabia, the millions of Egyptians that rose to the streets against the Brotherhood, is the philosophy of our colleagues on the right that those are not Muslims or that they don't understand their faith? So, simply put, Lisa, I would say that if you believe that I am fighting this, and our American Islamic Forum believes that you can separate mosque and state, that we are within the walls of Islam, then, or if you believe we're outside the walls, then somehow you know more about what I believe is Islam and so many millions of Muslims believe is Islam, because so many of us that end up in jail in the Middle East or elsewhere don't leave their faith when they do that. They don't then say, oh, you know what? Gosh, I must have had my faith wrong. Therefore, when the Saudis put me in jail, or when the Iranians hit me with sticks because my skirts are too long, I'm going to leave Islam. And that doesn't happen. These women stay, their faith is what makes them continue. And I think that's what we need to tap into.
And I often say with the activists who follow me that the right and the left, and you just said it, use the Muslims for their own purpose. And that's distracting. Now, here's a question for you, because I hear this all the time. You said at that hearing that Muslim Brotherhood, Islam, is a phenomenon of the 20th century. Yet those who are doubting this analogy refer to the versions of the Quran from the Medina version. Let me go back for a moment and please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm no scholar on Islam. I barely am a scholar on Judaism. Certainly not. There are peaceful passages and violent passages in the Quran. And what is called abrogation? I've heard this word recently. I didn't even know the word abrogation. Says that what was revealed chronologically later, Muhammad's career supersedes and cancels out whatever came earlier. Unfortunately, all the peaceful versions came earlier in Mecca. All the violent ones came later in Medina. So for those of us who are trying to champion your cause, what do we say to people? How are Muslims supposed to accept the doctrine of abrogation, which is obligatory, and still try to live by peaceful Quranic versions? Remember, people on the right some will just see this as a book that you live by. So I'm asking you, can you pick and choose?
Well, I think that's the great question. When I debate imams, that's really what I confront them with, and the bottom line is that it is extremely important that we Muslims own up to the fact that the theology needs reform. But that reform is not going to happen in my lifetime, and hopefully we'll talk about what I think can happen in my lifetime later. But to answer your question, abrogation simply means that certain passages, God, not man, God in the Quran tells Muslims that I have canceled previous instructions. The Quran to Muslims was revealed over 23 years. So, for example, the best example of abrogation is alcohol. Initially, God permitted us to drink wine, and then another passage, he said, do not drink except as long as you don't go to your prayers drunk. And then he said, you know what? Later he said, you failed that, and therefore said he's canceled previous passages and prohibits us from drinking wine because of our inability to do that. Now, by saying that violent passages cancel all previous ones, God does not say that. That's the interpretation of the Wahhabis, of the Islamists, of those who think they are God. The passages that talks about violence and just war, and I believe, just like any of our faiths, that has permission to defend oneself, and there are passages, and I talk about this in my book, A Battle for the Soul of Islam, in which I talk about misinterpretations of the Quran or more modern interpretations in which we say that the passage that talks about various battles was related to 617, 620 AD, and cannot be then extrapolated ad infinitum, that my loyalty to America today is not canceled by a Quranic description of a battle in 610 AD.
We have much to discuss here today as we unravel the mysteries of Islam, Islamism, and what it means to be a faithful Muslim. This is Lisa Benson, KKNT 960, The Patriot. We'll be back in 3.
There's nothing worse than being stuck in traffic. 960 The Patriot wants to help you do something about it. And that's where the American Federal Rare Coin and Bullion Traffic Center comes into play. Get traffic reports 4 times an hour or jumpstart your drive home by visiting 960thepatriot.com and click on the Traffic Center banner. There you can create your custom route to and from work. The power of a traffic center right at your fingertips. The American Federal Rare Coin and Bullion Traffic Center at 960 The Patriot and 960thepatriot.com.
Lisa Benson and the team of Lisa Benson Consulting have more than 25 years of experience in business development, public relations, strategic planning, and branding of candidates and causes. As a direct result of Lisa Benson's expertise, LBC's record of accomplishments has been witnessed by their many clients who have achieved more than $500 million in bottom-line results. If you're thinking of running for office, starting a nonprofit organization, or have an organization that's in need of gaining greater public attention to meet its goals, give Lisa a call at 602-790-6418. Lisa Benson is a compelling and engaging public speaker with in-depth knowledge on issues such as national security, foreign and domestic policy, and nationwide training on effective grassroots mobilization tactics. Call LBC today at 602-790-6418. That's 602-790-6418 to schedule your free 30-minute consultation or to book Lisa Benson to speak to your group.
I love you, son, so it hurts when you say I hate you. I'm your mother. I'm tired of you disrespecting me when you don't get your way. I work hard to make sure you have everything you need. I should be able to ask you to get out of bed in the morning without a fight. So from now on, things are going to be different. I ordered the Total Transformation Program. We're not going to scream and fight anymore. I'm going to tell you what to do in a different way, and you're going to do it. You're not going to call me ugly names anymore, and if you do, you're going to get consequences that'll keep you from calling me ugly names. We're not going to do things your way anymore, son. We're going to do things the Total Transformation way.
Get the Total Transformation free. Just order the program, tell us how it works for you, and you can keep it for free. Call 1-800-715-4971. That's 1-800-715-4971. Call now, 1-800-715-4971. That's 1-800-715-4971.
This is Lisa Benson, and week after week, I bring you the best and compelling, accurate, measured information to protect Americans and the American homeland. We are a vibrant, growing nationwide audience that reaches listeners not only in Arizona, but throughout the country. If you would like to partner with me and expose your business or organization to this highly qualified audience, please call me at 602-790-6418. My audience is exceptionally loyal, well-educated, affluent consumers. I have various affordable advertising packages available, including simple 30 and 60-second endorsement commercials, as well as inclusion on the Lisa Benson Radio Show website or on my social media platforms. Together, we can grow your business or organization. Give me a call, 602-790-6418.
You're listening to The Lisa Benson Show for National Security Matters. To join in the conversation, call anytime at 602-508-0960. That's 602-508-0960. Outside of the Valley, call toll-free, 888-960-9696. Questions are also welcome by leaving a comment on www.lisabensonradio.com.
Welcome back, America, and thank you for joining the Lisa Benson Radio Show for National Security Matters. If you would like to learn more about me, please go to my website at www.lisabensonradioshow.com. And in studio with me today is Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, and it's quite a privilege to have him here. Dr. Jasser is the founder of American Islamic Forum for Democracy, and we're just going to continue with the conversation from the first segment. Dr. Jasser, before I bring a question on from the boards are totally lit up, and I want Jerry Gordon to ask a question as well, as he is the co-host. But quickly, you want to stimulate an Islamic Reformation. Absolutely. What the heck is an Islamic Reformation?
Well, basically, it's obviously going to be something that's going to take generations. But at the beginning of it, just as we saw in the West, the Reformation that created free countries like America and the Enlightenment in the West, what I hope to do is that's why our mission of AIFD is the separation of mosque and state, is to prevent the theocrats, the Islamists, from controlling government, from controlling our communication with God, from defining who is not a Muslim, and ultimately that needs reform, because there is nothing, and I agree, the Brotherhood, like you said, as much as their movement, their political movement of the 20th century started under Egypt, the history of Islam is that the Prophet Muhammad both was the head of the military, the head of state, and the messenger of God. He wore all three hats. There was no example anywhere in the world until 1789 of a country based in a legal constitution that had an establishment clause. So this is really what we hope to stimulate, is to bring the ideas that ultimately set aside theocracy from Western thought and bring those into the Islamic consciousness. And I think that can happen in my lifetime.
So would you agree that Islam is a political, religious way of life, total movement?
Okay, so the reason Islamism, absolutely. Islamism and Islamism as a political movement, I believe, dominates 30 to 40% of my co-religionists. The issue is the Islam of my family, of the millions in the streets of Cairo, all the reformers that I mentioned. That Islam is not a political movement. And there are so many of us, and there are scholars out there, from Muhammad Abdu, Muhammad al-Ashmawi, President Wahid of Indonesia, who wrote a book called The Illusion of the Islamic State, that has an organization of Nahdatul Ulamat that has 10 million members. I mean, these are not small reform movements that are trying to...
In Indonesia, you're telling me?
Absolutely. The NU, there's an organization called Lib for All that works closely with the NU, and so I'm not saying that these are perfect movements. They have a lot of work to do. But the bottom line is his book, The Illusion of the Islamic State, is about the need for Muslims to end this concept of theocracy, of having to have Islamic law-based government rather than reason-based law guiding our societies.
I want to bring on Jerry, who's co-hosting, who is also a brilliant writer and researcher. Jerry, you have a question for Zuhdi?
I do, Zuhdi. You mentioned reform, and there was a period of about 300 years after the establishment of the faith in which there was a concept known as ijtihad, the ability to discuss and perhaps even change certain of the concepts in the Quran and the Hadith and the Sirah. The problem with that is that ended, and what arose was the concept of blasphemy under Sharia, which prohibited any changes in the uncreated words of Allah. And the question is, why did that die? And what is the difference between that and your conception of reform?
Well, the reason why that died is a very long answer, and the best summary, I'd say Bernard Lewis has a book called What Went Wrong, in which he talks about the basic end of critical thinking. And ijtihad, as you said, to me as a Muslim, means the critical interpretation of Scripture, Hadith, Sirah, in light of modern day. That's what ijtihad means. And the bottom line is currently the leadership in our faith communities, the scholars that run the Islamic Society of North America, Islamic Circle, the Brotherhood, the Saudi universities, the Qataris, all of this petro-funded, autocratic, misogynistic, dictators that are running this basically believe that they have the only right to interpret these things. And if you don't have a degree in Sharia, much like many of my own conservative friends think that if you don't have a degree in Sharia, you can't have an opinion. And the bottom line is, ijtihad at the time of the Prophet and for hundreds of years was being done by every Muslim. And I can tell you that the interpretations that I give in my book about certain passages that we critically interpret, I'm not changing the Arabic. I would never do that. But because you have to maintain the authenticity of Scripture. But the English and my interpretation of that, so many of our families, from a grassroots perspective, by living in the West, either they're doing taqiyya and lying, or we have reformed our faith by living here and saying, you know what, the Scripture can be interpreted in a modern way. Women do have equal rights, and we can believe in a constitution based in a man-made document rather than man-made Sharia, which is a very autocratic, theocratic way of thinking.
Help me out here. Abrogation.
Yeah.
Where was that written?
Well, that's the thing is abrogation basically is a theological term that came about to say that, well, what do you do when passages conflict and when these clerics have passages that they don't know how to balance, and they say, well, God must have then canceled them. And the more purists of us, yes, which is why the only way to reform Islam is to believe that the recipe is right and do it from a position of love inside the faith. Those who love our faith will say, you know what, only God can abrogate previous verses, and unless he did it, there's a passage in the Quran in which he says, I have completed your faith for you today, which was one of the last passages. So therefore, that really takes the power and the oxygen out of many who say the Hadith is so full of so many laws for Islam, etc., because if God completed his faith for us in the Quran, then the rest is basically, commentary.
I have to tell you that I'm so confused, and I know half of America is confused. Are Muslims confused?
And I can tell you that many Americans know more about the Quran than the majority of Muslims, and that's the sad part. Is that for the questions you all have, for what Jerry's asking about ijtihad, when Muslims simply say, "Let me come to America and forget about it because I'm leaving the craziness in the Middle East," well, we have a laboratory here to do this work globally that we can't do anywhere else. And unfortunately, the Boko Harams of the world don't come out of thin air. They're coming out of radical thought and Wahhabi thought that's being funded by large global movements. And as the West sleeps, either we help and find sides that we agree with, or we're going to be destroyed by these large global movements.
Jerry, present your question. If we don't finish it, we'll get back after the break.
Very simple. Zuhdi, you mentioned taqiyya and its complement kitman, which are religiously sanctioned, similar to, people call that lying. What are they? Why did they arise? And aren't they being used by the Muslim Brotherhood groups that you have fought against here in the United States and abroad?
there's no doubt they exist. The origin of taqiyya was actually between tribalisms between the Shia and Sunni community, in which the Sunnis, because they were a majority, were persecuting miserably the Shiites. So the Shiites pretended to be Sunni when in fact they were Shiite because they didn't want to be murdered. And ultimately that created this concept of taqiyya, which is to put a false facade on what you are so that you can ultimately then later, when you're stronger, present what you really are. Not to mention, these are basically false premises. And I can tell you, raising my kids and believing in moral character, the way to defeat taqiyya is to be honest. And so ultimately, as in any political movement, the way to do away with corruption, taqiyya is an intrinsically corrupt ideology that believes that you can lie in order to, that the ends basically justify the means. And the only way to defeat that is through honesty and morality that'll come from a better Islam.
The whole board is lit up. Roger, Sarah, Mary, we're going to get to your questions. Someone is texting me with a question about abrogation. It's from the Quran, verse 2:106. I think we got to get to that one. Okay, stay with us. I'm getting on education here. This is Lisa Benson, host of the Lisa Benson Radio Show for National Security Matters, and we'll be right back. Hi, this is Lisa Benson, and I have a recommendation for you. If you are looking for a legal firm that specializes in federal tax issues, mergers and acquisitions, estate planning and business development, or even want to start a nonprofit organization, I strongly urge you to call my friends at the Keel Group. The Keel Group has a nationwide clientele located in Virginia with many clients in Arizona, and it is where I send all my business clients for legal services. They are a legal firm, CPA certified, and business consultants. In fact, they are a full-service legal and business consulting firm specializing in corporate, entrepreneurship, tax, estate, and nonprofit. I send my clients there to expedite their nonprofit filing. Please give them a call by going to www.keelgroup.com. That is Keel, K-E-E-L, group.com. I use them, and I hope you will as well. Thank you.
Look, the worst part about business travel is worrying about my wife and kids at home alone. My family's safety is my responsibility. That's why I started researching home security. I called the big alarm companies, checked online, even looked at doing it myself. But the best technology for the best price came from Vivint. Yes, Vivint gives me a complete security system, but their video technology is unreal. I can see what's going on in my home right from my smartphone, tablet, or computer. I can even lock the doors remotely if my kids forget. Best yet, when I signed up with Vivint, I got $1,300 worth of camera and security equipment at no charge. Vivint was the easy choice for my family's safety.
Take control of your family's safety with Vivint. Get free installation plus up to $1,300 in security equipment today at no charge. Just pay as little as $99 for activation. Call 1-800-236-7081. That's 1-800-236-7081. 1-800-236-7081.
Restrictions apply. 48 or 60-month agreement at minimum $49.99 per month required. Not available in Louisiana. See Vivint.com for license numbers.
This is Lisa Benson, and week after week, I bring you the best and compelling, accurate, measured information to protect Americans and the American homeland. We are a vibrant, growing, nationwide audience that reaches listeners not only in Arizona, but throughout the country. If you would like to partner with me and expose your business or organization to this highly qualified audience, please call me at 602-790-6418. My audience is exceptionally loyal, well-educated, affluent consumers. I have various affordable advertising packages available, including simple 30 and 60-second endorsement commercials, as well as inclusion on the Lisa Benson Radio Show website or on my social media platforms. Together, we can grow your business or organization. Give me a call, 602-790-6418.
How to be a great dad in 15 seconds. Bike ride, go fish, walk in the park, phone call, milkshake, play catch, picnic, fly a kite, tell jokes, laugh, talk, read a story, tell a story, bumper car, swing set, bowling, pillow fight, cut loose, stay tight. Whew. Because the smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today. Call 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
If you're looking for the latest videos, audio, and articles from the top political minds from around the country, like Jonah Goldberg, Thomas Sowell, Michelle Malkin, and many more, then The Patriot has you covered. Just log on to 960thepatriot.com today. This nation will remain the land of the free, only so long as it is the home of the brave. 960, The Patriot. The Patriot.
You're listening to the Lisa Benson Show for National Security Matters. To join in the conversation, call anytime at 602-508-0960. That's 602-508-0960. Outside of the Valley, call toll-free 888-960-9696. Questions are also welcome by leaving a comment on www.lisabensonradio.com.
Welcome back, America. This is Lisa Benson, your host for the Lisa Benson Radio Show on National Security Matters, www.lisabensonradioshow.com. And we are here with Dr. Zuhdi Jasser talking about what is the Reformation of Islam. Is it possible to have a Reformation? And my first caller is Roger from Melbourne, Florida. Welcome to the program, Roger.
Hi, Lisa. Hi, Jerry. And hello to you, Dr. Jasser. It's a pleasure to speak with you again, and I certainly applaud your vocal positions that you state publicly. I'd like to ask you about the recent reports of the U.S. Council of Muslim Organizations, the USCMO, which consists of CARE and 7 other Islamic organizations that are forming a political party. Doesn't this violate the First Amendment, which prevents government from having any authority in religion or any religion from having any authority in government? Here in the United States. In other countries, maybe not, but certainly here. So I'd like to ask your views on that.
Well, I mean, I think certainly in my book I talk about how when I was at the Islamic Society North America meeting, I saw Siraj Wahaj, who's still a board member of CARE, hold up the Quran and say that our goal is to replace the U.S. Constitution with this book. And from a sedition perspective, I stood up at that meeting in the mid-'90s and said that was sedition. So there's no doubt that I have major problems with their the reason and the motivations behind their political movement. But I'll tell you from a strategic perspective as an American, we won the Cold War without declaring the Communist Party illegal. The Brotherhood had more damage done to them ideologically in Egypt by having them run government and be part of the public political system in the last year in Egypt than 60 years of under Nasser, Sadat, and Mubarak, where they became victims. So ultimately, the way to defeat their ideas is to expose them and give them an antiseptic of sunlight, rather than making them into victims and using the legal mechanisms to try to prove that their ideas, as long as they're not preaching violence, I think we should just publicly criticize them.
Thank you, Dr. Jasser, and thank you, Roger, for joining us today. Next caller, Sarah. Sarah from Dallas, Texas. Are you with us?
I am. Hi, how are you?
Oh, thank you for calling. I think you're a first-time caller. Thank you for calling and your question today.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I would like to thank Dr. Jasser for your service to our country. You serve with distinction, and we certainly honor you, especially on this Memorial Weekend.
God bless you. Thank you.
Yes, and you too, Doctor. I am a Druze, and I know you know of Druze, and for those of you who do not, it is a small Shia sect, and I am now a Christian, and I work in this sector, so I'm very, very aware that this is a political movement, a political ideology that we are dealing with. How do you see us moving forward to expose radical mosques in our community? That's my question number one, and then I'm going to follow up with another one. And also, too, the conversions that we are seeing in our prison systems, obviously amongst certain segments of the population, i.e. blacks, and certainly now Hispanics that have been in gangs and related. Obviously, it's easy to connect and see that their lack of familial upbringing and forming of love and caring nature leaves them very vulnerable to be able for radical imams to come in and proselytize and convert them to that radical.
We'll have him start to answer this question as the phones are ringing, and we're 1.5 minutes to break.
Go right ahead.
Sarah. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah. And, you raised two great questions. One is, what's the strategy? What should it be? And basically, we need to take sides within the House of Islam, take sides with those who want to defeat Islamism, who want to believe in Western modernity based in reason, and are willing to take this. And I think that the way to do this, the theological arguments that are very potent and mostly right that I'm hearing that we've spent some time of the program already talking about and need to be done through ijtihad, but that's not going to happen in the next 10 years. But what can happen in the next 10 years is the political movements that will marginalize the clerics from government and make Muslims more potent in taking on the mantle that they don't want Islamist parties, political parties that will bring Sharia to government, but rather have governments based in reason and free thought. The prison systems, any of these closed environments, universities, media, government, have all been dominated by a lobby that's been fueled, as Jim Woolsey, the former head of the CIA, said, that by a $90 billion head start from the Saudis and the Gulf states. And we now need to start taking sides. I just came from London yesterday, in which I spoke to the Blair Foundation. Tony Blair really gets it right. He talks about Islamism whenever possible and how the West has been asleep. That's what we need to start doing, is having panels after panels to take Muslims to task on this issue.